Thank you. Welcome back to The Perspective. Now, Matthew, there's a debate about finding the balance, especially for government, to make sure it upholds human rights and at the same time does not harm the economy of the situation, the business. How from your experience in establishing and helping the legislative effort towards that direction, how can Indonesia? What's the best practices here that we can?
Well, first,
adopt?
it's a false choice.
Yeah.
As much as the tobacco industry would like the people to think that they are contributing to the economy, they're actually a net drain. It's contributing to poverty. Smoking rates are far higher among the poor in Indonesia. In families that are poor, where people smoke, they often spend more on tobacco than they do on food,
education, yeah,
both creating to malnutrition. The fathers in those families often die from tobacco-related diseases in the prime of life, leaving their families destitute in poverty. When you look at Indonesia's tobacco growers, they're paid literally starvation wages, while money is going up the chain to tobacco executives. Mm-hmm. And the thing that no one counts is the healthcare costs and lost productivity. Mm-hmm. When you measure healthcare costs and lost productivity, this isn't a choice between promoting the economy in Indonesia and protecting its children. Mm. It's a choice between promoting the wealth of multinational tobacco companies and promoting the economy of Indonesia and protecting their children. So it's critically important that people understand the facts here. Tobacco is contributing to poverty. It is preventing sustainable development. Its long-term impact as well as its short-term impact is devastating. As Indonesia thinks about providing universal health care, it won't be able to afford it unless it tackles the tobacco problem. Mm-hmm.
And now, you pointed out earlier, it has to be a priority for the government to make sure that it enacts, it mm-hmm. passes some kind of law that prohibits the access of a cigarette for children. 400 billion cigarettes are being produced, and the market is simply flooded with that. Access is everywhere for children.
Well, you see in Indonesia, children having access to tobacco products in ways you don't see elsewhere on the globe. Cigarettes are cheap, they're easily available, the laws aren't enforced in terms of prohibiting sale to those kids, mm-hmm. and indeed the tobacco companies market literally right next door to elementary school. Yeah. The other thing that's changed is that in a lot of countries, historically people said tobacco was part of the culture of the country. Mm-hmm. In the United States, we created the Marlboro Man and the Western cowboy. He's gone in the United States. Our culture has survived, yeah. and our children are healthier.
Yeah. And this is something that Indonesia should be looking out into. Now, we're tabbed as a baby smoker country. It's not a reputation Indonesia should be proud of, but it seems there's, of course, legislative, the government should be fully aware, making it into a priority in its legislative program, but at the same time the public, there seems to be very, there is a lot, the ample of information out there that tells the danger of from smoking cigarettes, and yet parents doesn't seem to be more concerned in a way that their children are actually exposed to these hazardous impacts.
You know, I have a great deal of sympathy to the parents because it's hard if you're a parent to go up against billions of dollars of tobacco industry marketing in terms of the images. It's hard of the parents when your school system doesn't teach your children about the health effects of smoking. Many of these parents themselves are uninformed, not because they're not good parents, but because the government hasn't done its job in providing them the information in a usable way. I don't for a moment believe that a responsible mother would allow her baby child to start smoking if she really understood the health effects of tobacco use. Mm-hmm. So I don't blame the moms and dads of Indonesia. Mm. I blame the government for not doing its job and giving them the tools they need to educate their children, and for not stopping tobacco companies mm-hmm. from becoming the primary source of information.
Mm-hmm. And yet we have over 500,000 tobacco farms here in Indonesia. This is what we talked about earlier, the report by Human Rights Watch on thousands of children exposed to the hazardous impact because they work in these tobacco farms. I believe, I'd like to think more positively that parents understand that these has effects on their children, but economically, so they had to make that choice between making ends meet, bringing food to the table, as opposed to their children's health, for instance.
Well, as I said, I think the data shows that a great number of parents actually don't understand the health effects of smoking. The other thing that I think is important to understand is the farmers themselves are victims here. They're paid extraordinarily low wages. In order to survive, many of them, in fact, have their children working in the field, not only endangering the health of their children, but depriving them of the education that they need because they're working in the fields in that respect. But there are solutions to those problems. If Indonesia raised its tax on tobacco products, it would not only discourage kids from starting, it could create a pool of funds to allow tobacco growers who want to diversify their income to have funds to make that decision. In the United States, we created a fund to enable every tobacco grower who decided on their own that they wanted to do something else to be given the capital to make the transition. And within a matter of 4 years, over half of the people who grew tobacco in the United States left it.
They shifted.
And they shifted to other things. There are examples of that in other countries as well. This is a case where government raising the tax can not only save lives, it can help tobacco growers move into fields that long-term will provide better for their families.
Matthew, we'll talk when we come back after the short break. We'll talk more about your campaign and your work with Indonesia. Stay with us.